Navigation, Where to Go. That's the title. Well, now let's check out the first slide. How do you navigate? Navigation is the process of finding where to go. A person can follow signs, ask people for directions, or simply wing it. For a more complex trajectory, GPS, a detailed map, and a compass can come in handy. It is beneficial to have a guide when unfamiliar with the trail, especially in foreign countries. Navigation can also be dangerous in many areas of the world with dangerous people. But it's not just people who pose risks. Animals can also be a threat. This is a picture of a trailhead sign, and the caption is, "In which direction do you wish to travel?" You can go Military Road to the left, 1.9 miles, or Bluff Bridge to the right at 0.6 miles. Let's go to the next slide. Our key vocabulary starts with an idiom, to wing it, which means to try something with no plan, or to have no preparation at all. For example, I could prepare for my exam, but I think I'll just wing it. That means you're not going to study. No studying, just do the exam. You're going to wing it. My presentation is in 1 hour, and I have nothing prepared. I will have to wing it. So you didn't prepare for your PowerPoint presentation. Now you just have to do it without really any preparation or material. Here's a sign with a diversion going to the left. Oh no, our route is gone. We will have to wing it. So we don't know exactly which roads to take. We'll have to wing it. Next slide is trajectory. Is a chosen way to go. For example, our current trajectory will take us straight to Florida. The rocket is on trajectory to reach the moon in 24 hours. So it's like, which direction are you going? Like if you see, our current trajectory is which direction are we going? Let's say we're going north, okay, that's our trajectory. Similarly, the wind's trajectory is northwest. So you see here, the wind is pointing northwest. More key vocabulary. Complex or complicated. If something's complex or complicated, it means it's containing too many parts, or it's difficult to understand. So for example, this map is so complex, I don't think I could read it. If you have a map that's confusing, you could say it's complex. It's too much detail, too much information for you to handle. The complexity of the exam caused me to only get 25%. Now that's a bad score, so the exam was too difficult or too complex. My relationship is complicated. My girlfriend is angry. This is a common word when your relationship is not going very well. Marriage is complex. Complications can result if the bride and groom don't get along. Here's an adjective, complex. Here's a noun, complications can result if the bride and groom don't get along. That would be problems can result if they start fighting. To pose risk means to be dangerous or maybe dangerous. So for example, all of the money we borrowed poses a risk to our finances, which means we borrowed a lot of money, so our credit cards or our loans, our mortgages, are a danger to our finances, to our money that we have. John posed a security risk at the party yesterday. He is dangerous. So if John was fighting, or he had a gun or a knife or something dangerous, he poses a security risk. And you'll hear the government often saying security risks when they're trying to talk about airplanes or buses or subways. Another example, we think offshore drilling will pose significant risk in the future. So if you think there might be an oil spill and it might cause some danger or damage, you could say offshore drilling will pose significant risk in the future. Similarly, these guys, these caribou or whatever they are, these animals can pose a risk to hikers. Keep a safe distance from them, especially in the fall when they're in mating season. They start fighting and running around crazy. They are certainly are a risk to you. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. Navigation on the water? Navigation on the water is difficult. Any miscalculation can result in the boat entering dangerous waters or storms. Hitting a rock or seabed is a seaman's worst nightmare. A hole in the boat will result in water gushing into the hull. Soon the boat will capsize and the passengers will have to abandon ship. Help must arrive quickly to avoid hypothermia. I don't know if this should be capitalized. Okay, hypothermia. When the body's temperature drops too low for too long, dangerous hypothermia can lead to death. Wow. Where do you want to sail this evening? So let's go to the next slide and see what we have. To miscalculate. If you miscalculate, it means you have an error in judgment or a mistake. One miscalculation installing the software will crash the computer. So if you're making your software let's say you're loading Windows onto your computer and you do something wrong, it could crash the computer. Or we miscalculated our landing. Our plane crashed into a tree. That's not very common, but sometimes if you're driving the airplane and you miss the runway and you hit a tree, that could be an error in judgment. Worst nightmare, bad event. For example, my worst nightmare is to lose all of our customers. And here's a picture of some steel. I miscalculated the heat and it turned into my worst nightmare. The entire project was destroyed and melted. To abandon means to leave behind or stop doing. We had to abandon Tim yesterday. He got lost and we couldn't find him anywhere. That means Tim was lost and you couldn't find him, so you just said, you know what, we're going to stop looking for him. We're going to stop searching. That's when you abandon him. The company had to abandon the new invention because it exploded. That's not a physical abandoning like when you lost Tim, so you stopped looking. This is, you had a project, this new invention, and it didn't work. It exploded, so you stopped the project to stop doing it, right? We will abandon it if it fails. It's pretty generic. That just means we'll stop doing or we'll leave it behind if it doesn't work. This is a picture of an excavator. The last company abandoned this mine, but we found gold. So the last company that was here was digging it up and they found nothing, so they stopped it. They left it behind and they stopped mining, but this company found gold. They were more successful. So you can see here, any miscalculation can result in the boat entering dangerous waters. And that is certainly a misjudgment, right? And soon the boat will capsize. That means the boat will sink, and the passengers will have to abandon ship. That means they'll have to leave the ship behind. It's time for our fluency practice. Today's keywords include wing it, complex, complicated, trajectory, pose risk, miscalculate, worst nightmare, and abandon. So let's go through the paragraph. Climbing a mountain is a complex procedure. Any miscalculation in trajectory results in falling to the base of the mountain. This is a climber's worst nightmare. If any equipment looks as if it could fail, the climb is abandoned. Some climbers just wing it with no complicated equipment. So-called free climbing involves navigating the trajectory with no safety equipment. If the climber's worst nightmare comes true, there is no way to abandon the climb. So here's some guys climbing the rock, and so climbing the mountain is a complicated procedure. Any misjudgment in where to go causes you to fall off to the base, the bottom of the mountain. This is the climber's worst nightmare because they don't really want that. If any equipment looks as if it could fail, the climb is abandoned. They stop climbing, right? Or they don't climb, rather. Some climbers just wing it with no preparation and no equipment and just free climb with no rope, no anything, just go. That's crazy. It involves navigating the trajectories which way to go, with no safety equipment. If the climber's worst nightmare comes true, in other words, they fall off. If they fall off, there's no way to stop. They will just simply fall and die at the bottom. So that's nice. Let's go to the questions. Question number 1. Which is an example of winging it? Preparing for 10 hours before an exam, eating chicken wings for 10 hours, or not preparing for a speech? Well, if you wing it, it means you don't prepare, so it means not preparing for a speech is the correct answer. Number 2. Which one poses the greatest risk? A child with a toy gun, an angry elephant, or a man who is sleeping? I would suggest the greatest risk is an angry elephant. What could cause a boat to capsize? That means sink. What would sink? Miscalculating trajectory and hitting a rock, calculating complex GPS and sailing fast, or navigating into a beach by winging it. I would suggest the capsizing would happen A. Miscalculating trajectory and hitting a rock. Which example is a complex trajectory? Shooting a rocket into space to hit a planet, walking to the beach to find a spot to relax, or driving down the road with no traffic. The most complex here would be shooting a rocket into space to try to hit a planet. That's extremely complicated.